Hey, good morning. Good to be back with you. You know, around every 4th of July, I think of our neighborhood hero, Bob Cavanaugh. Mr. Cavanaugh was a great athlete in high school, tremendous football player, basketball player, and then he got a scholarship to the University of Dayton and went and played basketball for UD. He held the all-time scoring record at UD for years and years and years and was in the Hall of Fame. After leaving college, he went into the Marines. And in World War II, he fought in the Pacific Theater, specifically on Guam. He got on that island, he was fighting with the Marines, and then he was shot in the chest and wounded. Then he laid on that island for weeks on end, and then finally was transported off the island and back to the U.S. But his family knew that he was wounded, but they had no idea really where he was or how badly he was wounded. And as he reached the shores of the U.S., he was being taken off of a transport boat, and he was on a stretcher. He lifts himself up and he waves to the crowd as they were all doing, glad to be home. And here's this guy wounded, and a photographer from the great magazine back in the day, Life magazine, took a picture of him. And the next couple of days it was in Life magazine, and that's really the first time that the family knew that he was well, he was going to be home, and he'd be back with his loved ones. And we so admired Mr. Cavanaugh. He's a real man's man. He came back, he was married, he had a son and 2 daughters, and he started a very successful business. And everybody looked up to Mr. Cavanaugh, you know, in the neighborhood. And around every 4th of July, you know, we always thank Mr. Cavanaugh, you know, for his service, and certainly was the hero to many in the neighborhood. Down at the end of the street was another veteran, and his name was Billy. And when Billy came back from the war, he was also wounded, but I think mentally, and he never really got his life together. The man made a choice to mend his wounds, and he did that with alcohol. And he was a severe alcoholic, not a mean man, not a bad man, but the guy sat on his porch, and basically as we walked to school, he'd wave to us in the morning, wave to us at lunchtime, and we knew him as Billy. He lived with his 80-year-old mother, and the poor guy never really got his life together. I can remember being 12 years old, and Billy went out on one of his binges. And at 5:30 in the morning, when I'm delivering papers, a cab pulls up in front of the house. Billy gets out of the cab. He can barely stand up. He falls. He hits his head on the curb. He's now bleeding. I help him get up, get to the porch. He collapses on the porch, pulls himself up over the banister, and proceeds to get violently ill. He's actually bleeding internally. 2 hours later, he would die. I've never forgotten that. It's indelibly, you know, tattooed on my brain. I can see the trench coat that he was wearing. It was a cool October morning. It had rained, and his mother panicked, crying, 80-some years old. We get him in the house, and then shortly after that, he died. So, you know, here's a lesson of two men that made very different kinds of choices in their life. Mr. Cavanaugh, so admired, left just a tremendous legacy, and I look at all the young men in the neighborhood that was impacted by his life, and there was Billy. And Billy, I think, left a trail of pain for many. The wife that he abandoned, the children that he abandoned, the choices that he made. And you still can have compassion for the man, but he made a different kind of choice. So I'll leave you with that. I hope that you've had a great week. Take a look at some of those veterans that probably live in your neighborhood and give them a thank. It's a great time of year, July 4th. Have a great weekend. Celebrate. See you next week. This is Pete Kunk, Built to Lead.